Hello, this is Real History with Melissa, and I am joined today by Nick Hayes from Hayes Reviews. And it just seems like forever because we've been seeing so much of each other in the C.S. Lewis series and now we haven't spoken in goodness gracious, 5 weeks, I think. And so here we are today to talk about Philip K. Dick's A Scanner Darkly, and this will be going up on the 19th of February. Nick is having a little bit of a holiday. And so next week is Neal Foster. And well, that last week was Neal Foster. Hey, I'm doing the trippy Philip K. Dick time travel confusion. So, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, got a lot going on, but 2026 is well underway and making plans. Looking forward to warmer climates. Looking forward to my son's first birthday
Wow.
mid-year in summer. So I'm hoping for a bit of decent weather and we'll cut the grass and have a nice garden party for him. And I've just been, yeah, that's it really. Recovering after the holidays and the indulgences and the excesses. But now I've got another holiday coming up. So I'm going to do another bout of recovery after this holiday. So it's just
Good,
cycles.
good. And you also have started in the new year a series where you are reading authors who are alive and then interviewing them about their book. And if you want to mention that, I have
Yeah.
yeah, seen a couple of them so far, and you're doing great work there.
Thank you. Yeah. It's just another sort of branch to what I'm doing is trying to reach out to people and also have people reach out to me and speak to some of the living authors and talk to them about why they took on this crazy undertaking of deciding to write a book because people out there probably know that I love books and I treasure my collection very dearly and there's just something very captivating for me about a book and how when you before you've read it you've got an idea about it and then after you've read it it's a totally different object in a
Hmm.
strange way, right? An
Hmm.
unread book versus that same book, once you've read it it becomes a totally different object once you know what's in there. And so yeah, getting the opportunity to talk to authors and and just pick their minds a little bit about why they decided to write a book, what they're trying to communicate to people, who did they do it for. It's been a real exciting journey so far, and I've been blessed to have had a couple of very hardworking authors who are very interesting people to talk to. Most recently, I talked to Diana Mara Henry. She did a book about a World War II spy who she knew, and he'd been interned in a concentration camp on the border of France and Germany that's not very well known. And then, yeah, so she translated his memoir and had them published, and then she did a lot of background research to validate his story. And the second half of the book is all about what she discovered and his escapades, and these amazing tales of sort of daring do and heroism and sort of bravery in the face of insane situations. So it was great to be able to talk to her. And then I'm lining up more authors. So if there's anyone out there who's got a book that they want to talk about, shoot me an email and get in touch. I'll read it and then we can
That's
talk about it.
that's great. And so Nick actually put me in contact with Diana Mara Henry as well, and I've heard from her. And her life outside of writing the book is just fascinating. I mean, she's met so many people, been involved in a lot of different things. And I got an email from her a couple of days ago saying that she was watching the very first episode of Real History.
Okay.
I thought, okay, wow. So and then I mentioned to Nick that I was going to be talking to Chris Fogarty. That just is an amazing man, I think. And I've just started to read the book, although by the time you see this, I will have finished. So, but yeah, so that's kind of fun to share a few finds back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's good. It's nice to knit together and build out a community and show that the importance of books because we've got our respective book clubs. My live streams at the minute, I'm going through Foundations. We've done
Hmm.
videos of that what an amazing book that is. What an important one it is.
Isn't
You know,
it?
and I'm 50
It,
pages into it, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it more than Brzezinski anyway, and I feel
yeah,
like it's more
yeah, oh
important than
yeah.
Brzezinski.
It's it to me, remember last year I was telling you, now when you get to foundations, this is it,
Yeah,
I heard Alan talk about it so many times he would mention it often, and I finally a couple of years ago read it, and it's so important because it really shows you just how long this private funding of the agenda has been going on and how
Mhm.
it's filtered out into governments and social services and most importantly academia. So it's just I'm glad you're
Yeah, and
covering it.
he gives you a totally new lens through which to view, like you say, academia, and charitable philanthropic endeavors in general, and
Hmm.
just how much of an influence when you're standing there with a massive bag of money saying, "Who wants some money?" And basically attaching strings to it and
Hmm.
making requirements and conditions with that
Hmm.
money, and then people who don't get paid very well end up trying to please the people who dole out that money. And when it's described in the way it is in that book, it's one of those. It just makes so much sense, and then it ties things together. So yeah, that's a really good one. And so yeah, just having book clubs, having book live streams, it was natural that we start talking to authors and try and have some of those conversations because I think and then the more I'm doing this, the more I'm realizing there's so many authors out there and interesting people with books to talk to, with books to talk about.
Hmm.
So I've got a list of about, I think there's 40 authors on there so far of people I'm aware of and know.
Fantastic.
I haven't contacted most of them, and some of them might be, you never know, but I've got a good long list. So more to come in that space.
That is great, Nick. That's very good. Excellent. All right, so today we are covering my got this at the library in the next town over, A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. And I was just telling Nick that at the library nobody had ever checked this out. And and you could say, well, some young minds have been saved from being perverted. So I had read a fair bit of Philip K. Dick, and I had mentioned so had Alan, and we'd read a few stories together, seen some of the movies, but we never saw A Scanner Darkly, and I had not read this. And so I'm not sure how it came up, who suggested it, but it's been on our list to cover for a long time. And you got in touch with me about a month ago or so and said, okay, well, I finished the book and I've seen the movie and I'd read the book before and I'd seen the movie before, but now I've done it all over again. So how are you doing? And I'm like, well, I haven't started yet, but so yeah, tell a little bit about the frame of mind, if you can remember when we talked a
Mhm.
few weeks ago, where your or head was at regarding the
Yeah,
book.
absolutely. So it's funny because you mentioned that you and Alan had read a lot of Philip K. Dick and seen a lot of the films. I was kind of the opposite. I'd never read any before this one, and I'll just hold up my edition. It's a SF Masterworks edition, Sci-Fi Masterworks,
And turn it,
and
angle it down away.
from the light,
That's it, and then the spine again, so that the light's
and
not blocking it. Yeah, okay, down. There you go.
okay.
Beautiful.
So this one is it's just a little paperback. There's a shop that in Bristol City that's it's just £3 books, brand new books, but every book in the shop is £3. And I used to love
Wow.
going in there, and this is where I got this, and I got it because I'd seen the film, and I had seen the film back. Ooh, I don't know. I was much younger, probably in my late teens, maybe um, 20 years old or something. I saw the film when it because it had Keanu Reeves in it, and I was a massive fan of The Matrix. And
Hmm.
and I thought, oh, a sci-fi film with Keanu Reeves. The Matrix was good, let me watch this Scanner Darkly. And of course, it's nothing like the Matrix. It's totally different. It is way more, I would say, grown up. It deals with more sort of life, more things that pertain to real life rather than the sort of fantastical ideas in the Matrix of waking up on a spaceship and eating porridge and learning kung fu in 3 seconds and all those kind of fantastical things. So I watched the film and I really liked it. It's by the director of what's it called? Waking Life, which is a famous sort of intellectual philosophical film. It's basically a lot of interviews stitched together and animated. It's kind of like a bunch of podcasts put together, two animations, and it's of these philosophical conversations. But this film is it's a live action film, but then they've overlaid it with animation, and
Mhm,
I think it's a method called cell shading or something like that. So they
mhm.
take each frame of the film, and then they draw over it and color it in. So you get the live action film, but then you can add things to it, and it has this sort of like I wouldn't say psychedelic, but it's a sort of trippy quality to it. Um, and yeah, and so I watched the film. I'm very familiar with the film. Saw this book in the shop many years later. Bought it, and then it sat on my shelf. And then when you and I started our series talking about which books to read, we got to I think we finished Snow Crash,
Mhm.
and then when it came to choosing the next one, I just had a look at what was on my shelf, and I
Mhm.
saw Space Trilogy and Scanner Darkly and Inverted World by Christopher Priest, which is going to be coming up after Scanner Darkly, and then after that, we haven't planned much past that. So so yeah, I was glad to finally get around to reading it, even though I'd seen the film so long ago. So I knew the plot, I knew the themes, and it was interesting because it's never, generally speaking, it's not good practice to watch the film before you read the book because
Mhm.
then the film's in your mind. And but I would say in this case, I think they've done a very good job of adapting the book to the film, and I think they complement each other pretty well. It's very faithful. It's about as good as you could probably do. There were no big changes to the plot, no big things left out. There's a lot of verbatim passages from the book repeated in the film. There's a narrator, so it's one of those where I'd say, it's not going to do you any harm to watch the film as well. I think it's complementary. So so when I came to read this just after Christmas, had a bit of downtime before going back to work and between Christmas and New Year. And yeah, it didn't take me too long to get through it. It's quite a thin book. It's quite an easy read. It's not too hard to follow. Um, but it was quite uh, sort of, I don't know what exactly the right word would be. The timing was kind of poignant because just after Christmas, in fact, we found out about, excuse me, somebody close to our family actually died of an overdose, a drug-related overdose, and came very unexpected, and it wasn't somebody close, but it was somebody that we have, it was close enough. I mean, these things are always too close, but it
Mhm.
was quite a shock. And so reading through this and the very well articulated themes of depression and drug use and the kind of identity crises that come up and the sort of situations of the people who are into this sort of lifestyle, if you want to call it that. It was quite difficult. I found it quite challenging because I could resonate so much of what was going on in my life, what's gone on in my life in the past as well. And so I actually found reading the whole thing very quite moving and quite challenging and quite like upsetting in certain ways because I felt
Mhm.
so much of my own. I could just kind of, I know you can tell that I could tell that he knows what he's talking about. Right. And I didn't really know anything about the man. Didn't know anything about his background, what his life was like. None of that. Up until the essay you sent me that I had a quick read through earlier that we could talk about, which was a very interesting one. But yeah, what he captured in this book, I think it comes from real hard-earned life lessons and first-hand life experience of the things that he's depicting. And I've heard it described as well as one of his most personal books. Like he put more of himself and his personal life and what it was like into this book than he did many of the others. And I think there's probably a good case for that being true as well. There's a section in the book where the main character is talking about his house,
Mhm.
and how it used to be a home where he lived with his wife and two children, and now he lives there with his two junkie friends. And that's kind of a theme. His reflections on this house and what it's become, and that passage it feels like that is taken from Philip K. Dick's life,
Mhm.
basically.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was quite a difficult read. I can't say I enjoyed it as such, but it's a very good book, and it's very good insight into the it's a very good example of the kind of these things that I just mentioned, the psychological situation of people who are into drug use and hanging around with other people who are also into drug use. And then it gives a real bigger frame within which to place that, um, with the revelations that come at the end about the main character and also the kind of the organization that's involved in this. So yeah, I thought it's a really great book. I found it quite tricky to read though, quite tough.
May I start at the end?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you suggested this, I said, "Oh, I've never read that, and I've never seen the movie." And one of the reasons why is because I'm not really a fan of animation, and I knew that that was live action with some kind of veneer of animation painted over it. But I'm like, I can't go for that. So I had started to read the novel, as you recall, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and you said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I hate it." I think is about the words that I used. And I haven't gotten past the first chapter. And you sent me a link to the movie, and I watched it that night. And I made it all the way through the movie, and I got to the very end. And it was what was at the very end that gave me the courage to go back and read it because it
Mm.
is a short novel. It doesn't take that long to read, but I really developed a rash in the first chapter. I'm like, I don't care about these people. I don't, ugh, yuck. So, but this is at the end. I may not read it all, but it's only a couple of pages. It's the author's note. This has been a novel about some people who were punished entirely too much for what they did. They wanted to have a good time, but they were like children playing in the street. They could see one after another of them being killed, run over, maimed, destroyed, but they continued to play anyhow. We really all were very happy for a while, sitting around, not toiling, but just bullshitting and playing. But it was for such a terribly brief time. And then the punishment was beyond belief. Even when we could see it, we could not believe it. For example, while I was writing this, I learned that the person on whom the character Jerry Faven is based killed himself. My friend on whom I based the character Ernie Luckman died before I began the novel. For a while, I myself was one of these children playing in the street. I was like the rest of them, trying to play instead of being grown up, and I was punished. I'm on the list below, which is a list of those to whom this novel is dedicated and what became of each. Drug misuse is not a disease, it is a decision, like the decision to step out in front of a moving car. You would call that not a disease, but an error in judgment. When a bunch of people begin to do it, it is a social error, a lifestyle. In this particular lifestyle, the motto is Be happy now because tomorrow you are dying. But the dying begins almost at once, and the happiness is a memory. It is then only a speeding up and intensifying of the ordinary human existence. It is not different from your lifestyle, it is only faster. It all takes place in days or weeks or months instead of years. Take the cash and let the credit go, as Villon said in 1460. But that is a mistake if the cash is a penny and the credit a whole lifetime. There is no moral in this novel. It is not bourgeois. It does not say they were wrong to play when they should have toiled. It just tells what the consequences were. In Greek drama, they were beginning as a society to discover science, which means causal law. Here in this novel, there is nemesis, not fate, because any one of us could have chosen to stop playing in the street. But as I narrate from the deepest part of my life and heart, a dreadful nemesis for those who kept on playing. I myself, I am not a character in this novel. I am the novel. So, though, was our entire nation at this time. This novel is about more people than I knew personally. Some we all read about in the newspapers. It was this sitting around with our buddies and bullshitting while making tape recordings, the bad decision of the decade, the 60s, both in and out of the establishment. And nature cracked down on us. We were forced to stop by things dreadful. If there was any sin, it was that these people wanted to keep on having a good time forever and were punished for that. But as I say, I feel that if so, the punishment was far too great, and I prefer to think of it only in a Greek or morally neutral way as mere science, deterministic, impartial cause and effect. I love them all. Here is the list to whom I dedicate my love. To Galen, deceased. To Ray, deceased. To Francie, permanent psychosis. To Kathy, permanent brain damage. To Jim, deceased. To Val, massive permanent brain damage. To Nancy, permanent psychosis. To Joanne, permanent brain damage. To Marin, deceased. To Nick, deceased. To Terry, deceased. To Dennis, deceased. To Phil, permanent pancreatic damage. To Sue, permanent vascular damage. To Jerry, permanent psychosis and vascular damage, and so forth. In memoriam, these were comrades whom I had. There are no better. They remain in my mind, and the enemy will never be forgiven. The enemy was their mistake in playing. Let them all play again in some other way, and let them be happy. So when I saw that, I then could muster up the strength to read what I knew I would have a very mixed kind of reaction to, because it is, tragic and wasteful and, it's awful. And when you look around and see where we are with all of the fentanyl abuse and, Scotland has heroin, every country's kind of got its own thing that is just wiping out a generation. And it is it's a social crisis. It's a social ill by design.
Mhm.
And that's the element that that I doubt Philip K. Dick or any of his contemporaries understood, was that it was by design. And here we are, all these decades later, no lessons learned. It's just, the deaths keep coming. I'm going to find, it just went through my head. There was a little music video that Alan and I watched that we loved, and it shows the progression of I think it's methamphetamine. So it's just a little music video, and I'll plug it in here, but it's the ravages of meth.
No more will I go to Blandford for a more morty on the slow train from Midsummer, Norton and Mumby Road. No chance, no porter, no cat on a seat at Chardin, come Hardy or Chester Street. We won't be meeting again on the slow train. The slow train. I'll travel no more from Littleton, Batsy to Open At Long Stanton I stand well clear of the doors no more. No whitewashed pebbles, no up and no down, from Formby for crosses to Dunstable town. I won't be going again on the slow train. The slow train. No more will I go to Blandford for a more morty on the slow train from Midsummer, Norton and Mumby Road. No chance, no porter, no cat on a seat at Chorlton, come Hardy or Chester Street. We won't be meeting again on the slow train. The slow train. I'll travel no more from Littleton, Batsy to Open At Long Stanton I stand well clear of the doors no more. No whitewashed pebbles, no up and no down, from Formby for crosses to Dunstable town. I won't be going again on the slow train. The slow train. On the slow train.
And so, pick your drug, pick your, OxyContin, pick your part of the world, your part of the country, and just see what's going on. And so, as a piece of pop culture that celebrates that, or that venerates and uplifts, Philip K. Dick and says, oh, how wonderful, but as a genuine slice of the mess that we find ourselves in with the very real problem, well, then it's worth at least a conversation. So,
Yeah. So here we are.
yeah.
Yeah. Well
Not a
said. This.
glowing endorsement.
No, no. I mean, it's hard going. It's heavy going. And you said the word tragic, and I think that is my, if I had to put a one word review on it, I would say this book. The story is tragic, and it is that slice of how a lot of people live, and these are the people who are kind of often looked down on or ignored or left behind or abandoned or dismissed, these, but they're still people, and they are choosing to do this, as he rightly says. They're choosing to play. They're not toiling. They're not working. They're not growing up. I really like that bit that you read. I'm glad you read it in full as well and got the names on there, because he does get some of the key things here, which is shirking responsibility, not wanting to grow up, making a choice to have fun right? And to do what is immediately going to bring a bit of joy or entertainment or happiness with a real disregard and abandonment of that longer term. Um, and with regards to like the idea of it glorifying or I don't think this book does any of that. Like I don't watch I mean I don't read it or watch the film and think, yeah, it's not like Train Spotting. It's not kind of
Mm.
cool with the nice soundtrack and the, good looking act. I mean, it really doesn't make anything about it seem appealing, I don't think. So I think that's something to be said. It's not likely going to get people thinking, oh, that looks great. I want to give that a go. I mean, he literally calls the main drug that's doing the damage in the book is called death.
Mhm.
Substance D. D is for death. And in the film, it's a little red pill. I don't know if he mentions the color of it in the book, but in the film, at least,
Mhm.
it's a red pill, which is just a interesting because you've got Keanu Reeves taking red pills again for
Mhm.
you know
Mhm.
in films that were released 5 years apart or something. So it's just an interesting little sort of repetition of theme there. But yeah, I don't think he glorifies it at all, and I don't think he excuses it. This choice, although he does seem to think that the punishment is too great, but it's not a moralistic, this is bad and you shouldn't do it, kind of
Mhm.
thing, right?
Mhm.
He lays a responsibility on the people themselves who went through it. Um, but yeah, this what you said as well about how it was deliberate. That is kind of in here. It is in the topic of in the subject of the drug itself and how it's created and how it's made and where it comes from. Um, that is the kind of arc that comes to a close at the very last scene of the film. Um, and it's actually on the front cover of my version as well. You can see in his palm there, maybe you can
Mhm.
see he's
Mhm.
got these little blue flowers.
Mhm.
And so one of the themes of the book is this drug substance D. Where does it come from? Who's producing it? Is it synthetic or is it organic? And I think at the beginning of the book they say it's synthetic and they don't know who's cooking it, but some organization must be making vast quantities and putting it out there and selling it and putting it onto the street, but they don't know where it's coming from. And then what it turns out to be at the end is this little blue flower, and the little blue flower is being cultivated on these properties, these sort of farms that are staffed by people who have gone psychotic through using the drug and have
Mhm.
had such a degradation in their mental functioning that they basically become drooling zombies who can just about push a mop, and spray that, and then they go to work on these properties. So it's
Mhm.
and what is really interesting and synchronous is that the organization, I forget the name of it, is it called New Paths or something? But it's a foundation.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
like, whoa, it's crazy that I'm about to read Foundations, and then Foundations
Mhm.
and it turns
Mhm.
out that this foundation that are taking in all these wrecked people whose lives are being destroyed by this drug are actually the ones cultivating it, producing it, and putting it out there.
Mhm.
So there is something in this book about his awareness that you know,
Designed. Yeah.
this is by
Yeah.
design. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. I think, obviously he died in the early 80s, so you can't, looking back now, you can't just call the 60s a one-off. It was the unleashing, it was the gates of hell, basically, in a drug form. Yeah. And all countries have been proven to be complicit in it. And that's the thing that isn't really talked about, as they wring their hands.
And they're still making it look cool to this day. I just finished watching. Well, actually, I didn't watch it. I abandoned it because it was so rubbish. But there's a show on Netflix, and it's called Wayward. Like
Mm.
the wayward child, and it's garbage. It's terrible. Don't watch it. Don't waste your time on it. But there's part of the plot is these two young girls. They're early teens, I would say, mid-teens. They're best friends, and they come from pretty well-to-do families, but they're sort of tearaways. And one of the and they're like smoking pot together on the roof and not
Mm-hmm.
going to school. And then, but you just see this like casual drug use,
Mm-hmm.
young people casual drug use. This was done as well in a TV series in the UK called Skins. Skins as being a kind of slang term for the rolling papers that you roll a cigarette with, right? Have you got any skins? But so that was it. So they're still pushing it through
Mm-hmm.
media and TV shows and film, making it look cool. They'll be taking ecstasy and having a great time, or dropping some acid, and whoa, you're seeing all the colors, and that was done in. There's just so many examples of it. I see it all the time now.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah.
like you said, no lessons learned. Nothing. It's still by design. They're still rolling out, and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
And another topic that this ties into that is I've just been learning about recently. There's a live streamer called Housatonic, or he
Yes,
live streams
I'm familiar with
Housatonic.live.
them. Yeah.
And he talks about similar to
Yeah.
JJ Curry, right? They're talking about how there has been a massive explosion in drug overdose deaths that
Right.
fed into the statistics of and labeled as excess deaths during the Big C. So that's quite an interesting.
Well, Housatonic talks about his own personal connection
Yeah, and he's
to
interviewed
this. Yeah.
a woman who set up a whole group interstate. There's a group in each state for parents who've lost children to drug
Mm-hmm.
overdoses, and that whole interview is incredibly powerful. So this is not a problem of the 60s. I mean, this was 1977 when Philip K. Dick wrote this. It's ongoing. It's being perpetuated. It's being used over and over and over again. It's one of those techniques that Alan might call it of population management and control. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's known the certain number of people will give into these things and choose these lifestyles, and it will ruin a certain number of people, and then it perpetuates the philanthropy and the charities and the medical system and the
Mm-hmm.
money and the public spending and the foundation spending, and we got to find a cure for this, and so it feeds into a whole engine, a whole machine that is old. It's old.
Yeah, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but in Canada, with the legalization of marijuana, and now in many states in the US, and the use of medical marijuana, and I mean that the pro cannabis, pro hemp thing has been on the go forever and ever, and
Yeah.
they've just kind of arrived at a place where I think what that is soma.
Mm.
Mind you, and you can say what you will about medical uses or the wonders and joys of cannabis, but it does pacify. There is no doubt about that. It pacifies, and that's the purpose of soma.
Speaking of, from personal experience, I've been a heavy smoker in the past, various times. And what did I do? I'd like, order a pizza, watch some television, play some computer games. It made me less. I didn't, I didn't want to go out so much, see people, do things. I felt a lot more content just vegetating on the settee in front of a screen.
Hmm.
And it seemed to complement that very well. Watching back-to-back episodes of whatever series I happened to be into at the time. Um, and I definitely found that it made me more insular, less outgoing, less wanting to spend time with other people, more content just to chill out on my own and enjoy my own company and my own little world, my own little thing, and usually some sort of fantasy being delivered
Absolutely.
by way of screen
Yeah.
to complement
And
that.
and if the fantasy happens to get attached to, oh, let's say you pick up a guitar or you open up a notebook and you start writing a poem or a short story or something, chances are the next day that little guitar riff sounds pretty common. that poetry is kind of not much, you know. I mean, you know, you when you're high, you're a genius, and the next day
Yes.
it's like, okay, all right,
I did
so
once design. Probably shouldn't tell this story. No, it's not that bad. I did once had an experience with a new substance that I'd never tried before, and then I came up with this design of a tattoo, right, that I was gonna have, and it was gonna take up my whole back, and it had like a two or three headed cow on it, and an alien, and a mosquito, and a snake. And I thought it was such like the best idea ever. And I had like these drawings, and now I'm like, thank you. I'm so glad I got this full back tattoo. But yeah, I was thinking that, it would be this image that would communicate such profound information that someone would just look at it and, have
but then
some
you'd
sort
have to
of
walk around
awakening.
shirtless forever.
I know it's so stupid,
You
but
could
it's
just
true.
have it, you know, let put on a t-shirt, right?
I mean,
No.
if it's on my back, I can't even look at
Yeah.
it to enjoy it. So, so that's just a personal anecdote there of these things. But yeah, at the time it seems profound. It seems amazing. It seems like you're really plugging into something real, and
Mhm.
I think it just lowers your. It just kind of it makes mundane everyday things seem extra special.
Mhm. Yeah,
So.
it's interesting. Well, you know, there was a novel that I read of his several years ago, and that was one that I just read by myself. Alan didn't, you know, I showed it to him, and he said, "Oh, okay, well, tell me how it is." And it was Philip K. Dick called "Now Wait for Last Year." And that was 1966. And what I was thinking about was the progression of a kind of an idea between that novel and this one. And also probably a progression of or you could call it a degression or regression, but a progression of some mental illness with Philip K. Dick, and also more of the descent into degeneracy.
Mm,
That, you know, so 11 years later, these concepts that he's playing around with, and now wait for last year, come through. It's a drug, and it may or may not, as I recall, it's been years since I read it, but as I recall, we never actually find out if the time travel is real, because he sets it up in such a way that when the person is high on it, you know, it's plausible. Nobody saw them. It's plausible that they went somewhere in time and, you know, came back. So,
mhm.
but it definitely makes the person feel that they have traveled backwards or forwards in time.
Okay.
So that was an interesting device of it. And there is another element that may or may not have been autobiographical, now that I think about it, where the main character, his wife, has become addicted to the substance because, as I recall, it also there's similar thing to a Scanner Darkly, I think, because in A Scanner Darkly, he wears this suit when he's undercover for the police department, and the suit is constantly changing, you know, and there's a funny scene there where they tell you how many times that he morphs, and they use something like 2 million bio, you know, your prints of face prints and eye prints, and so you really don't know who you're looking at. And that's a kind of an element in Now Wait for Last Year, where
Mm,
they are able to change their appearance. Now, whether they just think they're changing their appearance or they are changing their appearance is also not clear in the novel, but it's one of the side effects of the drug. So playing around with a kind of a recurring theme that I think maybe has to do with identity or how he sees himself, or, you know. So the
Yeah.
other element that factored into our very recent take on this is that Judy of the Scarves, sent us a little essay here written by, I'm assuming he's a psychiatrist, but I didn't look him up. It was written, I don't know when, a few years ago. And it's called, oh, here it is, 2024, September. Philip K. Dick, A Psychotic Prophet by Lawrence Ratna. And it's very interesting. I can link to it. It's about 11 pages, but he is taking an opportunity to diagnose Philip K. Dick based on things that Philip K. Dick said to other people, things that he wrote, records that he left behind. He makes a diagnosis for him. And it's very interesting. And it also gives more biographical material on Philip K. Dick than I ever had. So Judy's point was she went and bought the novel so that she could read along with us. And she got it. She didn't research it. She was just like, okay, Nick and Melissa are covering this. I'm going to buy it. She did. She sees what it's about and like, oh, no, I don't want to read that. I don't want to read that. I don't want to read it, and I am not reading it. But what she did was do a lot of background research to find out what might be wrong with Philip K. Dick. And what we find out here, see, I didn't know. I think, the comments that Alan had made about him was that it didn't seem that he was coming from the same school of the cookie cutter futurist society sci-fi writer who'd been given an authorized script. This is what we want planted in the culture. So that was his take on it. This is a person who has obviously pushed the envelope of their mind, the way that people sometimes do if they are creative. And, as this psychiatrist makes out, creativity can come with mental illness, that it can be hard to distinguish what is what. I mean, there's a famous painter who cut his ear off, we all know that story. So, um, but anyway, she sent that to me. I sent it to you, and it's very interesting. It gives you,
Yeah, there's so many interesting little quotes that come out of that that illuminate what's written in A Scanner Darkly, and give you that background. As I said at the start, I think he lived a lot of what he put in the book. One of the things that came out of that essay is that a quote from one of his lovers or his wives, because he had many, saying that he didn't seem to know who he was, like saying that he had an identity crisis,
mhm,
which is what unfolds in the book.
mhm.
So we've got this main character. He's called Bob Arctor, which is an obvious play on actor. And even the character comments on that at one point. He's like, Bob Arctor, actor. So this character, Bob Arctor, as you mentioned, he's undercover and he's trying to find the source of this drug that's ruining all these lives. And so he's undercover trying to buy it, hanging out with the people who take it to work his way closer to the source of where it's coming from. Now, to maintain his identity, when he goes to work to report on what he's discovered and what's been happening, he wears, as you mentioned, the scramble suit.
Mhm,
And this is one reason why watching the film is good, because you get to
mhm.
see this visually represented, and they do a pretty good
Yeah,
job.
that's true. That's true.
And at one point at the very beginning, in fact, Bob Arctor, he's giving a speech to this little like club of Where are
Lions
they?
Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the person who introduces him says, "Let's hear it for the vague blur," because it just looks like a vague blur, right?
Yeah.
And so you got Philip K. Dick with his identity crises, and you got this Bob Arctic character, and what happens is he when he wears the suit, he goes into the office, and everybody's wearing these suits, and it modulates the voice, so you don't know who you're speaking to. Yeah, so there's no way to tell. And he goes and reports on the friendship group that he's kind of made his way into. Now, because he has to protect his identity and he shouldn't give away who he's reporting on. He talks about Bob Octor because Bob Octor's in that group. And so he ends up in this situation where he's investigating himself,
Mhm.
but he can't reveal that he is Bob Octor in these reports. And this kind of becomes the seed which grows into this identity crisis because at work what's his name at work? Is it his boss is called Hank,
Mm.
and what's he called?
Um,
He's got like a one word, just a short name, hasn't he?
I want to say Fred, but
Fred. It might be Fred. I think
yeah,
you're right.
I can't remember now.
Well, I went to Ed, and you said Fred, and there it
Okay.
is. Yeah, Fred at the top of the page. Yeah, you got it, Fred. So he's Fred at work, and he's reporting to his boss Hank, and then he's Bob Arctor out of work. But when he's at work, he's Fred reporting on Bob Arctor and Bob Arctor's group of friends. And then this is what leads to, and then as he's spending time with this group and he's taking drugs and they're all sort of looking to buy the substance and they're taking drugs, getting high together, whatnot. Through the book, this identity starts to unravel and he starts to question. And there's sections where he's saying, oh, I got to investigate this Bob guy. But I know Bob. He's a good guy. He wouldn't be up to anything, and he's having these conversations, these internal sort of dialogues about himself with himself. Um, and so yeah, it just complements very well what's written in that essay about Philip K. Dick, which talks about the high likelihood of him having borderline personality disorder.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other thing I wanted to mention is that this author who wrote the article that you'll share with people, he makes the point that most people try and infer things about Philip K. Dick based on his fiction,
Hmm.
whereas what this guy did, he went to the letters and the memoirs, and apparently Philip K. Dick, there's a book out called The Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, and this was compiled from 9,000 pages of notes.
Yeah, I think it has an acronym which I forgot what it stands for, but it's VALIS.
Right.
We should look that up and see, but VALIS is this massive tome that he wrote.
Wow. So that just lends a little bit of credence to this author who's done this article. So yeah, I would recommend reading that alongside this if people are going to, because um yeah,
Well,
he
just a couple of things I know because we said we weren't going to go page by page or section by section on this. So on the topic of the scramble suit
yeah,
and um, basically spying on himself, at one point the department installs CCTV cameras all throughout the house. So then Bob Arctor is going to be under total surveillance with the druggies that he lives with. And he has a conversation with Hank about how isn't it going to make it if, that he said, well, what if I'm in there, right?
yeah,
And Hank said, well, what you need to do is scrub, like go through there and digitally scrub out. But he said, you can't just scrub out yourself
everything, because then we'll
and
know who.
everything because then we'll know who it is. So it's just this insanity of the
Yeah,
surveillance operation. So he has to digitally remove sometimes one person in the house and then sometimes another person and sometimes himself. So he is kind of losing it there. And the other
and
thing, go
I'll just
ahead.
mention, sorry, as well, is the surveillance are they're kind of like holographic um, recording devices, and they're
Hmm.
hidden throughout the house. But they capture a 3D representation of the room, and so he can kind of uh, pull up, the footage in a sort of 3D way and manipulate it and move it around. Just to point out like how forward ahead of his time and forward thinking he was, and how where he saw things going, very accurately so, because here we are with all these the Internet of Things and all these devices with all their various microphones and haptic sensors. Apparently smartphones can record the gait of your walk,
Mhm.
and we're just, I'm sure, given what most of us have in our homes, they could probably whip up a little holographic 3D rendering of our home and our movements within it,
Oh,
you know,
sure. Yeah.
at this point. So I just wanted to mention that because, yeah, he was for a book written in the 70s. That's pretty impressive, and the scramble suit too. Sorry, I didn't want to throw you off.
Oh, no, not at all. I was gonna move to a different thing, but tying into the essay here on his state of mind and see if I could find it. Um, and then I might not be able to, is one of his ex-wives said, oh, there it is. Okay, there's a couple of interesting things here. He had been called by several psychiatrists who gave him a diagnosis. He had been called schizophrenic. And there was a place in the exegesis where he said, this is how you define psychosis. It would account for the AI voice, the three-eyed sibyl, and the extreme archaism of the contents. And seeing Rome AD 45 would simply be a psychotic delusion. I did not know where or when I really was. Now, he'd had psychotic breaks or schizophrenic breaks once, he said, when he was 6, and then when he was 18, and auditory hallucinations. And these auditory hallucinations, this is very interesting. He called it his AI voice.
Hmm.
And this was, this is way back even, in the 60s or before. So he had the AI voice and what psychiatrists called first rank symptoms of schizophrenia. But other place in this article, one of his ex-wives said that he would drive around Orange County, which is it's kind of where the conservative, very, very rich people live south of Los Angeles, Hollywood area. There's Los Angeles County and then there's Orange County. And so he would drive around Orange County and be convinced that he was in, what did she say, fourth century Rome, I think, was the delusion. So this is on page 22 of my copy, and they were looking at a place called McDonald Burger. And he said, according to their sign, they had sold the same original burger 50 billion times. He wondered if it was to the same person. Life in Anaheim, California was a commercial for itself, endlessly replayed. Nothing changed, it just spread out farther and farther in the form of neon ooze. What was always more, what there was always more of had been congealed into permanence long ago. And then he goes on to say, he asks a question. He says, I wonder if in the future someday it will be mandatory that we all sell the McDonald's hamburger as well as buy it. We'll sell it back and forth to each other forever from our living rooms. That way we won't even have to go outside. Now, there's a place here where he's talking about, so this is what he sees about Orange County. But really, when he goes out in Orange County, he sees it as fourth century Rome, and a complete hallucination of his environment. His ex-wife, I think her name was Anne, said he no idea where he was. And then this doctor who's written this essay diagnosing him said it would look like he had agoraphobia, which would be, he'd be confined to his home or his room for long stretches of time. I mean, there's something kind of humorous about it, selling this that would be forced to buy and sell the same hamburger over and over. But again, there's something I will not call him a prophet, but there is something kind of eerie about this place that we find ourselves in, where throughout the lockdown, everybody got trained to order on Amazon. Mom and pop brick and mortar shut down, shut down, shut down. And, people stayed home and drank too much booze. And I heard accounts and had problems and marriages. And I know people that this happened to dissolved and watched a lot of pornography, et cetera, not leaving their house. So it's just, yeah, it's interesting. Another was the plan always to create a not just a dysfunctional culture, but a psychotic one?
Hmm. Well, I mean, what another way that idea is backed up is this idea of surveillance and where we are now in 2026 with social media, with young people accepting that they have no privacy.
Hmm.
Basically, young people now, they just know they have no privacy, and that's normal. You can't. Every, young people risk every second of their life being filmed and uploaded to the internet and being recorded permanently. I mean, and that's they'll shrug and say, "Well, it's just the way it is." So they've trained people out of having privacy, but also this surveillance comes in because anyone at any time can record you. They could have the microphone recording in their pocket. You are being recorded and surveilled all the time anyway by the apparatus that does that sort of thing. Um, and where does that leave people if they don't ever have time to sit and think and just let their mind wander and daydream? Because I think there's value in that. There's value in unstructured time spent letting your mind wander, letting it go where it might. It's kind of like dreaming, you know. There's if you don't dream or you don't sleep, then you go crazy as well. So that you've got to have some time which is not structured, where you're not being fed information, where you're not following something that has a format. People just aren't getting that anymore.
Hmm.
So I think that ties into this as well. This like making people psychotic, paranoid, making people lonely, and then just having the technology kind of inserted in there as a proxy for all these real world, real life things that people are missing. And certainly the lockdowns and the big C accelerated that tremendously.
I absolutely, and there's a place here on my 48 of my edition here where I actually have notes about social media, and this has to do with the 32 caliber weapon that Bob Archer keeps under his pillow. And this sensation, he knows there's something going on. It's not good. It's just that it's paranoia. But there is a place here where he's describing sleeping with the gun and that feeling of knowing that something is going on. And I just bracketed the section and put here social media because it's how it struck me. And that was whatever was going on, whoever it was by, it was going to be chicken shit and devious, some freak without integrity or guts, lurking on the periphery of his life, taking indirect pot shots at him from a position of concealed safety. Not a person, but more a sort of walking, hiding symptom of their way of life. And I thought, well, there you go. That's social media. That's the kind of, oh, I'm a bullying. Here I got my avatar, and I'm just going to hang on the periphery of my life here, taking pot shots, indirect pot shots at people. from a
Yeah.
position of concealed safety. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
hiding behind a pseudonym, hiding
Hmm.
behind some graphic, not even having the balls, sorry for the
It's okay. It's all
sexist
right.
language, but not even having the cojones, the guts, let's say, to put your name and your face out there
Yeah.
with the words that you're saying, right?
Yeah.
It's that anonymity. It's they're
Yeah.
hiding in the scramble suit.
And you know what? There is a kind of an irony here, but I think that we are living in time. The funny thing is that I noticed that the bookmark that I was using for this book, I didn't really pay attention to it until this morning.
Grounded.
Yep. And so it's like, well, I know, I'm not high as a kite all day long, and I'm not time traveling with the use of substance D or something else. So there is a groundedness to being in reality. And part of that for me is the recognition that anything that you do online is known and has been for a long time to anybody at a certain level of clearance that wants that information. And so, I know Alan used to be disgusted by people who would say about not caring about their privacy. Well, I don't have anything to hide. That is disgusting because we all have parts of ourselves that should be private.
Hmm.
That is very different than facing the reality that when you go online, you are known. So these people who hide behind the name that is not theirs or the avatar that what that is just the bully pulpit. It's the place where you can take indirect side swipes at people and all day long. And aren't you big? Because you've put people down. And I know you've been in the crosshairs of that before.
A little bit.
Oh, thanks for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, and then that's it. So the scramble suit is a good metaphor because you can log out of one account and log into another. So then you have the problem now of these AI bots and the chat bots that get programmed and inhabit the comment sections and the forums. And I know Alan was always saying he hated forums and there was no reason to go on them and comments off on videos because what is the value of those comments really? I mean, in a lot of cases, it's just time wasting nonsense, and it might not even be written by humans. And now you've got LLMs
Hmm.
doing people's writing. So the thing that keeps popping up that I keep noticing is the GPT kind of leaves certain fingerprints
Hmm.
when people have used it. And once you train to yourself to recognize them, you get to a point, you go through an article and you see it, I just close the tab down. I'm not, if you can't be bothered to write it, why
Yep.
should I be bothered to read it?
Can you share that story that you shared with me a few weeks ago? You might gloss it over so that to protect the innocent, but about the email that was passed around and doctored up. That
The email.
Yeah, they got the LLM to compose it. Well, maybe the person actually wrote it, but then
Oh
used.
yeah, 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 yeah. So
Yeah.
there's two stories. But
Okay.
the email was um we had a new person join the organization at work, and this email got sent out, and they call it a pen profile or something. It's an introductory email. Hi everybody, I'm new, blah 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 blah. Here's a little bit about me. And I read through this one and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. She sounds quite friendly. It'd be good to meet her. I'm looking forward to, that made it sound interesting. I'm looking forward to getting in touch with her at some point. And then I was talking to another person who said, oh, did you get so and so's email? I was like, yeah, yeah, I got that. We got the original email and we put it into Copilot, which is the Microsoft Chat GPT, and we said, add some humor. And then we sent this one out with this added humor in it. And I just couldn't believe it when I heard that. I was like, we are circling the drain and we're about to plop down into the tubes any second now. you know. And then another example was I was reading and I found a portion of a book mentioned another book. And so I looked up this other book on Amazon. I'd never heard of it. I thought, oh, let's see how much it is. Maybe I'll get it, as I always do when I learn about a new book. And I read the description on Amazon. I'm like, okay. And I went back to the book I was reading. And then I was reading, and I'm thinking, this sounds awfully familiar. And the section in the book I was reading was like almost word for word what was written on the Amazon webpage describing this book. But they hadn't said on Amazon it says dot dot dot. It was
Mm-hmm.
that paragraph from Amazon fleshed out a little bit, with a few phrases inserted. But
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, word for word, you could track it and underline it and say, oh, they've taken that paragraph and just fleshed it into two paragraphs.
Uh,
And I thought, oh, that's either I don't know. I don't know if it's AI or not, but this is the problem now is that you become hyper suspicious. You become paranoid. You're like paranoid, like Bob Arctor and his friends are all the way through this book, that because you don't know what you're dealing with. Is it a bot? Is it legit? Is it a human? Does it come from somebody with a soul? Does it come from some
yeah.
fake piece of software? And it just makes I found recently my appetite for engaging in the online world is so diminished.
Yeah. I'm with
um
you.
yeah, and it's chat groups and comment sections and articles and blog posts and all of this stuff. I just feel like, oh, it's like a drag now. I used to be excited to read a new article by such and such a person who I might enjoy learning from. Now I'm going, yeah, but did you really write this?
Yes, for me, I call it like the hunt for humanity or the hunt
Ah,
for a human. It is challenging where you find something and you think, oh, you start off that, oh, this is pretty, and then you realize several paragraphs in it, no, this was cranked out by a machine.
mm.
It's just, did you see that image that supposedly the White House generated of the protester in Minnesota that's AI? Well,
I did not.
yeah, it's the White House itself, I don't know, Trump or somebody on his staff has been accused of manipulating an image of a protester who was arrested in Minnesota over the ICE, which are the border people that are there.
Hmm.
And you see a woman, and I believe she's handcuffed, and she is being led by a couple of agents, and her head is high. She does not look happy, but other than that, she's not, there's no grimace or anything like that. And the supposedly, and I read it in the New York Times, which is, according to Gerald Celente, the toilet paper of record, but they show you the picture there that they say the White House manipulated. And, her face is it's just distorted in rage.
Mm.
It's been completely manipulated from the neck up to make it look like she's having, a total meltdown. And if that's true, I mean, well, it is true, right?
Yeah,
If
I
if
think
it's
so.
true, then you can't trust government.
Well, and yeah, and this is, I feel like this is one thing I should bang on about more, is that people have to remember that any audio or video or text that they see on a screen that they've never seen before prior to, I don't know, the last 3, 4 years or whatever, they have got to be suspicious of it. They have to be cognizant of the fact that it could be completely phony and fake and made up by software. And I don't think people are proceeding with the level of caution that is required and necessary. I think they still think that, oh, I'll be able to tell the difference. Oh, the New York Times will tell me if it's an AI,
Yeah,
you know. But
exactly.
so anything could be concocted now.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you look at,
Mm-hmm.
any image,
Yeah.
while we're on the topic, while we're having a good old moan, the AI images that people use, right? So even if I'll just say now, even if you lovingly pour over every word in your blog post or your article, and then you put AI images in, I'm not going to read it.
Yeah.
I could because I just like if you're sticking AI images
Yeah.
in there, I'm going to assume you used AI on the writing as well.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it's judgmental, but I don't have time, and I'm just going to make that call to just go, no, I'm not looking at it.
Yeah.
And I know it's convenient, and I know it's, but look, Canva is not that hard, and you can crank out a decent looking thumbnail on Canva or an image pretty quickly, and at least you've put some thought and creativity
Yeah.
into it that is from you, from your ability to create. Because just handing it off to some machine, it's just I don't know. It's soulless.
It
It's
it
gross.
it actually is, and right before we hit record here, I told you of a little problem that I'd had with a real history that I
Hmm.
had just put up before we recorded, where some setting, I don't know, somehow I'd accidentally changed a setting on the video maker, and it made the zoom image quite small. And I was struggling to figure out how to save the work. But at the end of the day, I would so much rather put that up with my silly little cut and paste images and the graphics I make on PowerPoint. And it's all so crude and ridiculous and probably something that any third grader now could beat me at. But you know what? It's mine. I did it. I
Yeah,
own it. It's like,
exactly. And I
yeah,
think
that's my
people,
crude work.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And you got to be proud of it, And I did say this on the stream fairly recently, is that everything I put up on a live stream, um, I've put together to the
Yeah.
pictures that I took of the books in my collection that I put as a little backdrop. And the only thing I didn't make really is the logo, but
Hmm.
the music and everything else, that it's a labor of love, and it comes from me
Hmm.
and not some piece of software. And I think we're going to realize what that's worth. Authentic human creativity and expression, a lot more as we barrel into this like AI hellscape that we're going into. Um, so yeah, moan over.
Well, there's just a couple other things I marked, not a lot, but one thing interesting is when he has the psych evaluation at the police department, that whole series of scenes where he has to go and take the tests and, the Rorschach and just all the different evaluations they put him in because they know that his mind is degrading because of substance D.
Hmm.
And so they're studying him. But he gets into something interesting here. It comes up a couple of times. I don't know if I've marked them both, but he cites a study that I did not take the time to look up, but it's from, says in July of 1969, Joseph E. Bogan published his revolutionary article, The Other Side of the Brain, An Oppositional Mind. In this article, he quoted an obscure Dr. A.L. Wigan, who in 1844 wrote, "The mind is essentially dual, like the organs by which it is exercised. This idea has presented itself to me, and I have dwelt on it for more than a quarter of a century, without being able to find a single valid or even plausible objection. I believe myself then able to prove, one, that each cerebrum is a distinct and perfect whole as an organ of thought, and two, that a separate and distinct process of thinking or rationation may be carried on in each cerebrum simultaneously." So what the cops are telling him in the evaluation is that his the left and right hemisphere have ceased to work cooperatively with any kind of communication between the two of them. and that I think they give it a name, which was pretty funny, but I didn't mark it. But it has a diagnosis. It's anyway, one half of the brain has taken over. And he said, and here's one of the cops talking, and he says, there's in many of those taking substance D, a split between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain occurs. There's a loss of proper gestalting, which is a defect within both the percept and cognitive systems, although apparently the cognitive system continues to function normally. But what is now received from the percept system is contaminated by being split, so it too therefore fails gradually to function, progressively deteriorating. And then they give him some more tests and ask him if he can identify, a drawing on the gestalt and if he can identify it correctly. And there, I found that interesting because it seems to me that this is part of Philip K. Dick himself trying to figure out what's wrong with my brain. Why do I see things that aren't there? Why can I still think? So the cognitive faculty's there, but I think things about things that aren't there,
Hmm.
So I found
And that's
that to
part
be
of
interesting.
the tragedy as well, is this character's awareness as he comes out of these meetings, and the sort of dawning of the realization that this is happening to him, reminds me of people I've known who've had dementia or Alzheimer's,
Mm,
and they know that something's going on, but there's nothing they can do about it. Their memory still fails them. They still forget faces, but they might get stuck in these loops of really upsetting pain because they can't retain a piece of information. And so
mm,
maybe maybe somebody's died, and they keep asking how that person is, and they keep getting told, oh, well, she died. And then they cry because they're hearing it for the first time over and over and over and
hmm
over again because they can't, you get, and then so there's that like just terribly painful, heartbreaking tragedy of you've got enough awareness to know, but not enough to be at peace with it, or not enough awareness to not be dealing with it, right? It's a real tragedy. That's
It
why I keep
is,
coming back to that word.
I came back after Alan died. I was here for the last 6 months of my father's life, who had dementia that was far advanced. And my brother was telling me that he had quit asking about my mother by the time I was back. But there was a period there, a long time, when he'd say, "Where's your mother?" And it would be the same conversation over and over. And finally, my brother took him to the cemetery, a couple of times when he asked that, and he would show. And it seemed to actually, after two or three visits to the cemetery, it seemed to somehow settle in there, and he didn't
Mm,
ask that anymore. And, and then at the same time, he was so out of it, most of the time, just completely in his own world. And then there would be these period or things that he would say that I just like, how does the mind work? It's amazing. Like he was downstairs and I went into my mom and dad's room because I had not yet gone through my mom's things. Some of them had been dealt with before I came back from Canada, but there was a lot that needed to be gone through. And I knew that she had a drawer full of little purses. And I thought, oh, I'll go borrow borrow, she's gone, but I'll go borrow a little purse from mom's drawer. So I went in there and opened up the drawer and I pulled out the purse, and my dad came up the stairs and through the door. And I was I just felt that sense of having invaded his privacy, even though, he's gone. And I apologized to him. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to borrow one of Mom's purses." And he said, "That's okay. I'm not using it." And it was this flash of Dad's humor, that it was like,
Hmm.
wow. And another time, like 6 weeks before he died, we were having a family dinner, and he got up from the table and went through to the piano in the dark and sat down and started playing the piano beautifully. And then he stopped, and we're said, "Dad, don't stop. That's beautiful." And he said, "Well, I can't see the music because it's dark." Well, there was no music there, So he was just playing
Hmm.
it out of his head. But so whatever is happening in the brain of dementia, which I don't know that much about, but it is like things are still there that are so human and rich and talented, and but it doesn't work.
Hmm.
Doesn't connect.
Yeah, it's. I know people who go through it, people who have to witness it and be carers for those who are going through it. They just you wouldn't wish. You often hear, "Oh, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy," because of the how it can how difficult and it can be. And to go back to the book, we kind of we go on this journey with Bob Arctor slash Fred, who basically he's much better at the start of the book than he is at the end, and he goes through this journey. The bit you read out about him getting paranoid, something's going to happen. He's got the gun under his pillow. He's got this prized possession. I don't know what it is. What it's supposed to be. Maybe like I imagine it being a record player or something,
It's a
something
weird
music.
machine, but yeah, I
A
know.
weird machine, and it's the original vintage thing, and somebody's broken it, and nobody, and you never find out who. I don't think we ever find out in the
I don't
book who's
think so.
broken it.
No.
But there's a guy living with Bob, who is promising to fix it. This character, and I think it's Robert Downey Jr.'s
Hmm.
character um, in the film. But then this character ends up in the office with Hank and Fred slash Bob at one point, trying to turn in Robert Arctor because he starts to have these suspicions about Bob Arctor, right? And so these sort of, if there's any entertaining comedy in there, and you said previously that you think Philip K. Dick's a really funny writer, right? And I haven't read any of the stuff, so I don't know if I didn't. But if there is any humor and entertainment to be found in this, it's these paranoid conversations that they get into where they start to feed on each other's neuroses, and they start to get into a panic, and then it's all in their minds. They've just made a mountain out of a molehill, and really there's
Hmm.
nothing going on. But at the same time, there's also this subplot of genuine suspicion, and uh, this person living with Robert trying to sell him out, and then also Robert investigating himself, and then and it turns out to be justified because at the very end, like what happens is Robert's character, he gets more and more unstable. He becomes less and less sure of his own identity and who he is, and he eventually has to be admitted into the New Paths Recovery Rehab Center.
Hmm.
And this is the very end of the book. He gets put in there, and he has some visitors come round, and then he gets shipped out to one of these farms that I mentioned,
Hmm.
where they're growing the little blue plant, which they make into substance D. And it turns out that this foundation, this New Paths Foundation, is 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 actually under suspicion, but they can never get anybody near the these farms. They can't get anybody in there, and so what we find out at the end is that Robert Arctor has been chosen
Hmm.
to be sent, basically be sent in undercover, but they can't send him in whole. He has to, they have to put him through, the substance D and the damage it does, and they basically destroy him and his personality so that he can get in there, and then they're just kind of hoping that he will retain some memory of and bring some evidence out for them, which there's this very poignant
Hmm.
scene at the very end that he has that little flash, and he bends down and he looks at the flower, and he picks it and slides it into his boot, and he says, "This is for my friends." So it's got a real story arc to it,
Hmm.
that is satisfying when you get to the end and with the revelations. And but again, it's just so tragic because, to my mind, the fact that he's used in this way,
Hmm.
he's and then there's other revelations as well about the people in the friendship group, but he's basically from the start being used by this organization,
Hmm.
and they know who he is, and they
Hmm.
know that they've told him to investigate himself, and they know that this is going to
Mess with them.
mess with him and accelerate his condition, and it's just so cruel and heartless, and yeah, just sad and tragic
Yeah.
to find out that he's just been used in this way.
Yeah. And there was a place about halfway through where he's talking about the Christ who's everywhere present and everywhere growing more great, and Christ, the final determination and the plasmatic principle of the universe. And Arthur said, "What is that?" And then he's talking to Luckman. Luckman says, "Chardin, Teilhard de Chardin." And I thought, okay. And that was it. I spent 2 days on, yeah, I did. Because, I had been exposed to him and seen a little bit of his thought when I was with Alan, and I don't remember how it came up, if it was Bishop Williamson or maybe Malachi Martin, but somehow we had learned about Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit priest and a paleontologist. And I'm like, boom. And so I spent a couple of days just, I listened to a Teilhard audio book, basically his major work. And that was introduced by none other than Julian Huxley. So
Was it
it's
the phenomenon of man?
Yes. Yeah.
I
This
sorry, go
noosphere,
ahead.
this is noosphere and the omega point. And I know that Courtney Turner has talked about the noosphere and the omega point. So I don't, so the idea is we are evolving to the Christ consciousness, which
Mm.
I have said, and I'll say it again, I don't see evidence of this. And it was fascinating to see these priests and nuns swallow this, which is really essentially a new religion, but they're like acolytes for the new religion. And so the out is, well, it's okay. It could take 1 million years to evolve to that point. And it's like, oh, okay, all right.
Well, the
It's
next
yeah,
million years. That's
yeah, exactly.
It's so funny though that because I was book shopping the other day, and I sent you a picture of the book that I picked up that I almost bought on a whim because you were talking about Annie Besant,
Yeah.
and the name Besant, and I found this book which was an autobiography of Walter Besant, and it turns
Yes.
out that he is brother-in-law, Annie Besant's brother-in-law. I didn't buy it. I instead got Ends and Means by old Aldous Huxley. It's not
Mm-hmm.
coming through very clear
Mm.
there, is it?
No. Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't have a front cover, you see. It's just
Okay. Okay.
but yeah, Ends and Means by Aldous Huxley. But I picked up Phenomenon of Man, Teilhard de
Yeah.
Chardin, and I'm
Yeah.
looking at it and I'm going, hmm, this rings a bell. I know the Teilhard de Chardin, I know the guy's name. I'm like, but is this the book that is the important one of his? Because I'm sure he's done many, and I didn't get it in the end. But now that I know exactly where it is in that bookshop, which is just down the road from me, I'm like,
Yeah,
ah.
I'm pretty sure that is the same title, and I did listen to like 4 hours of the 8 hour audiobook. Plus, I listened to it. Very interesting that the lectures that I listened to, all oh, Chardin, Teilhard, wonderful, wonderful, were coming out of Georgetown University, which is Carol Quigley's place where he taught. So it's when I saw that there, and then in the book, and then I went to look up what does Teilhard de Chardin have to do with Philip K. Dick, and found out that he was heavily, heavily, heavily influenced by the writing of Teilhard. And part of this VALIS, let's look up VALIS, VALIS, but part of the VALIS,
Mhm.
the exegesis, is that Philip K. Dick became convinced in this 9,000 page, middle of the night scraps of paper, writing, obsessive, crazy writing, that he was receiving direct communication from God, that he was being shown the future, that he was, now, and there's some interesting things. I'm not altogether poo-pooing it because of the highlighted sections from the article that we will link to that you sent me this morning. So
Mhm.
I am not dismissing the idea that he was receiving something. What I question is where he was receiving it from. That's my question.
Valis is a 1981 science fiction novel by Philip K. Dick. The title is an acronym for Vast Active Living Intelligence System, which is Dick's Gnostic vision of God.
So really, Valis would be quite a bit like Teilhard's noosphere. It's that's what it is, and we're in communication with all things all the time, and that could make one crazy. I mean, at
Mhm.
the time, I know I had not read the article that Judy sent us yet, but at the time, I made a note to myself about, because obviously, even though I didn't have a lot of biographical information on him, I knew that he had been married numerous times and had, drug problems, etc. And the mental note that I made was, I wonder if Teilhard's writing had more to do with messing up his thinking than even drugs, because um, it's definitely some warping concepts that.
And he got the I don't know. I kind of get the impression that his life was just one long, trippy, confusing experience because of that article that Judy shared with us, detailing the symptoms that uh, align with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder,
Mhm.
including mood swings and having extreme um, relations with somebody. So falling madly in love and then hating them and rapidly switching between the two and kicking his girlfriends or his wives out and then immediately begging them to come back and this very life of extremes where
Mhm.
he would flip from one to the other. um it just sounds like he was a tortured soul.
Mhm.
And one of the quotes that stood out to me from that was a description of him by, I think, a friend or maybe a fellow writer or someone who said it seemed like Philip K. Dick was holding back. Well, let me just find it because I shared it with you. It was like he was holding the fort against the forces of evil.
Mhm.
And this just reminds me and ties into this idea of him losing control of his own mind and feeling that ideas and words were being put in there,
Mhm.
and that question of by what, by
Mhm.
whom, and if he was living in some sort of cross point, because I think it reminds me of the idea that our nervous systems and minds and brains filter out more information than we can possibly conceive, because if it was all going in, we would just go insane like immediately. So if you
Mm-hmm.
think about the piano and the keys on a piano, what is actually let in is sort of one key on that
Mm-hmm.
whole thing, and the rest of
Mm-hmm.
it's blocked out and kept away because it would just overwhelm us and just destroy us to let it all in at once. And then so there's this idea that some people, they might get two keys or three. There might be a whole chord. They've just got something about them is more open and receiving different layers and different communications that the average person might have just figured out how to sort of block. So this could be where these entities, if you want to call them that, or these other streams of knowledge or information are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're adding, to the top of that, some goofy concepts like the Teilhard de Chardin's work, um, then it's a recipe for, a really tortured life and very short life as well, wasn't he? I think he was in his early 50s when he
Yeah,
died.
maybe 52, and he'd had five wives and countless lovers, and you know, attempted suicide several times, and one was nearly successful, I think. And so yes, he was definitely a tortured soul. Um, did you ever figure out what the German was?
What was, sorry?
The German, the poetry that was repeating through there.
No, I didn't. I didn't even
I
translate
tried.
that.
I tried. It starts about the last third of it. When he goes,
Yeah.
remember he's got the check at the key at the locksmith that has bounced.
Yes.
There, he's got a piece of German in his head, and I let's see at first I thought maybe I had found it. I thought that it might be something from Faust,
Uh-huh.
but it turns out that I can't confirm that. I don't think that's it. And so the only thing that I could find for sure, well, I'll put this up too, but it's a trend. It says here that whoever put this up back in 2009 said translation for A Scanner Darkly. And they take this whole poem and translate it into English. And
Hmm.
it's interesting. I'll give it to you, but yeah, it may be just original Philip K. Dick, because if it is anything, it doesn't show up on
Right.
word searches for me. It doesn't appear to be from Dr. Faustus, so just was curious if you'd looked.
No, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
He really starts losing his grip on things.
hmm Speaking, I mean, about the only thing that I have left that I marked is losing his grip. It's again the left and right hemisphere. And this is where we get the title of the book. They're telling him at the psychologist for the police department, I think is who he's talking to. He said, "You are impaired, and you may, take off your scramble suit, take off your gun. You're going to be impaired for a while." And so now he's not, he's still Fred there. He's trying to figure it out. And he goes, how come this is happening? And the psychologist has a talk about left-handedness versus right-handedness, a left glove, and then so this is what we come up with. Um, does a right-handed glove is a left-handed glove compared to a right-hand glove? So a person who has no knowledge of those terms can tell you what they meant. So it's again into Philip K. Dick's mind here, but this person whose mind is disintegrating. It is as if one hemisphere of your brain is perceiving the world as reflected in a mirror, through a mirror. See? So the left becomes right and all that implies. And we don't know yet what that does imply to see the world reversed like that. Topologically speaking, a left hand glove is a right hand glove pulled through infinity. Through a mirror, Fred said, a darkened mirror, he thought, a darkened scanner. And St. Paul meant by a mirror, not a glass mirror. They didn't have those then, but a reflection of himself when he looked at the polished bottom of a metal pan. Luckman had told him this in his theological readings, not through a telescope or a lens system which does not reverse, not through anything but seeing his own face reflected back up at him, reversed, pulled through infinity. Like they're telling me, it's not through a glass, but as reflected back by a glass. And that reflection returns to you. It is you. It is your face, but it isn't. And they didn't have cameras in those old days. And so that's the only way a person saw himself backward. I have seen myself backward. I have seen, in a sense, I have, in a sense, begun to see the entire universe backward with the other side of my brain. And so that's where A Scanner Darkly came from. And it also, having had some insights into his mind, and people who tell us that this is evidently the most autobiographical of his books. He sees himself backwards through infinity.
Not much more to be said on that. I don't think that's a good place
Yeah, I
to
think
leave it.
so.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's not a book I can say I enjoyed reading, but I would say it's very good at the topics it deals with. Um, it's yeah, it is a good book. It is a good film, but I wouldn't say it's enjoyable. I certainly missed all the sandwiches and the warm, like
Yes.
the nice the fireside conversations of the C.S. Lewis books. The third that hideous strength of
Hmm.
the ransom and his entourage all gathering together and hanging out with
Yeah.
the Mr.
Dancing
Bultitude the
elephants and
bear. And yeah,
yeah.
there's really not much in it's quite a not an I wouldn't say nihilistic, but it just feels like it doesn't have that underpinning of there's no optimism in there. There's no uh sort of spiritual safety net or reassurance at all. It's a really kind of, I don't know. They talk a little bit about um God and religion very briefly, but overall I think it's quite an atheistic, materialistic type of world.
Hmm.
They just look, they're talking about like their objects and the things they got to do and the broken machine, and it's they're looking to get high and get their next fix, and it doesn't have that anything about it. Nothing about it is sort of reassuring or comforting at all. It's quite a cold corporate world where people are just used, and though even though he's being used to uncover and get to the bottom of this, the creation of this drug and where it's coming from, you get the sense that nothing's going to change, even if
Hmm.
they find, just like we were saying at the very beginning, this is done on purpose and is allowed to happen and will continue to happen because it's a must be,
Hmm.
as Alan would say. Um, so yeah, it's not cheerful, upbeat, feel good reading by any stretch, although it is very good. That's all I got to say.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else to say either. So an inverted world. Now we've seen it backwards forever through infinity. Now we're going to see it inverted.
Yes, yeah, and I'll say as well, just to a little teaser, the main character of this book, Inverted World, is called Hellwood Man, which is quite
Mm.
a name. And that
Hmm.
might give you a little clue. Maybe it's not going to be anything
So
cheerful either.
yeah, so we have back to back um well, not optimistic and possibly not sane.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, it's by Christopher Priest. If you're out there following along and you want to get yourself a copy, Christopher Priest, as I mentioned before, also wrote the book The Prestige, which was
Yes.
made into a very, very good film by Christopher Nolan, starring Wolverine and Batman
Hmm.
and Michael Caine. So yeah, and actually, the author Christopher Priest said the film was better than the book. The ending, he
Yeah.
changed the ending and improved it. But Inverted World is not a film as far as I know. So but it's quite well regarded. Although I'd never heard of it, I bought it from the same bookshop I got this.
Oh, great. So $3 or £3.
Yeah, and I just picked it up because I knew I had read Prestige,
Hmm.
and I just saw Christopher Priest's name, and I thought Prestige was great. I'm gonna just roll the dice, grab this one, and read it. And yeah, it's a mind bending sort of. I mean, it's what it says on the front. I've got it over there. I forgot to bring it over. It's a little bit longer than Scanner Darkly though, so we need to give ourselves a bit of time to get through it. But yeah,
Okay.
Christopher Priest,
All right.
Inverted World, coming up next.
Well, it doesn't sound like either one of us is at a loss for things to do. So,
No,
but we will read that next. So yes, do get a copy, and hopefully it may not be optimistic, but hopefully it won't be quite so bleak as a
no,
Scanner
bleak.
Darkly.
That's the word. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I suppose maybe we invite people to um although maybe this would be opening the floodgates to give us some suggestions because we don't have a plan for after Inverted World.
We
So,
don't, but hold on a second because
okay.
I was sent a Christmas gift of a couple of used sci-fi read,
Ooh.
yeah, and they're right over there. I'll be right back.
Go on then. Oh, that's exciting. I do love books and books that are gifted as well. So I'll say that while Melissa's not here, if you're stuck for what gifts to get on any occasion,
Okay,
get
I don't
get
know.
buying
I don't
books.
know anything about them. I don't know anything about them except
Oh,
for one of them was written by Neal Stephenson, who did Snow Crash, and that's all I
oh
can
yeah.
say. So that is,
The Diamond Age.
yeah.
Okay. Let me
And
make a
it's
note.
a thick one. It's it's like 500 pages, but all I know is it's Neal Stephenson and it's thick. So I can't tell you anything else. And this one is,
Rainbow's End, Vernor Vinge. I haven't heard of that one.
no, I had not either, and I had not heard of that author either. It's The Mysterious
No.
Stranger and Mr. Rabbit. World famous poet Robert Gu missed 20 years of progress while he nearly died from Alzheimer's. Oh, well, speak of the coincidence of
Okay.
that. All right. Now, when he awakens in San Diego in the year 2025 with his mind and health restored, reality's a shock. Books are just about gone. Computers are old news, replaced by smart contact lenses that connect
Oh,
him to the internet via his clothes and wireless nodes just about everywhere. Buildings look low rent unless you're wearing. Then they look like whatever you want. Even he is different. He's 75, but his treatment has made him look like a teen. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in the new digital age. I wonder what year this was written.
that's
That's,
exactly what I was going to ask.
yeah. I literally hadn't cracked them open because
It's got to be recent, surely. Smart. They mentioned smart.
2006, so
Okay.
20 years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, so some of that would have been kind of out there. And I will have to have a magnifying glass for the date of this one. So, uh, and even with a magnifying glass, I can't see it. But anyway, Neal Stephenson wrote it sometime. Looks like 1995. So that is an oldie, 31 years old.
Ooh, okay then.
Yeah.
So how do we decide between these two?
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Let's see if people, I don't know, maybe they can send us a message and
Yes, we'll
let us
say
know
that.
what they prefer.
Okay. All right.
And
So send
but we should
send
put a
us a
time limit
message.
on it. So maybe,
Send us a message by when?
well, this is going up on the 20, what do you say, the 19th?
Yeah, 19th.
So I'd say let us know by the end of the month. That gives people a week and 2 days.
Okay. All right.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, weigh in, send an email, send a message, and we'll go with whatever you suggest. Did you want to add a third? Do you have one lurking on your shelf, or is that good?
Um, I do have books
Okay.
lurking on my shelf, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure which one would be a good fit.
All right. Well, then we'll
We've talked
stick
about
with.
quite a few different ones. Every now and again, something springs to mind, and I chuck it in the chat, like, "Oh, this might be good." But I think seeing as those two were sent in, and
Okay.
we'll just leave it a choice
All
between them.
right. Rainbow's End or the Diamond Edge. But next is Inverted World.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we did well. That we got all the way through. There's no part two of A Scanner Darkly.
It's far too bleak to drag out.
Yes. All right. Well, I enjoyed this very much, and thank you all for listening and watching. We appreciate it.
Yes, thanks everybody. And if you do want to watch the film, it's on Odyssey, the streaming platform, Odyssee, and you can just
I
type it in and you find it there.
I may go back and find the link that you sent me and supply that as well. So that'd be good. And I thank you again.